So this notion of a crucible, right, as a way of changing a company and org teams is the idea that you have to heat an organization past its melting point, that just trying to make changes by bending it or pounding on it are going to leave an organization or teams operating in exactly the same way they were before. And if those people think they're wildly, in most cases, people should understand how much better they could actually be at something, or how much better the teams can be, how much better the org can be, how much better it can compete. Got involved in one of these Agile coding dojos, and it was super interesting. We really wanted to completely break the way people operated and reforge them on a different path. And the idea was that we would shorten their cycle time so tight that they would have to throw out any of their comfortable blockers, delayers, general processes, and force them to take another look at the way they actually did something. And the idea is we just need to put enough heat that this thing melts down, and the only way they can succeed in the exercise is to do something different. And then we hope that that's cooled down afterward, they stay with that, right? So in a particular coding dojo, dojo people talk about doing katas and improving, and I think that's all cool. But this other kind of approach to it, matter of fact, I actually have a quote here now that I think about it, right? I guess it actually came from a martial arts. The idea behind the dojo is it's a crucible where we heat it up enough, we force your weaknesses to the front, right? We have to do it in a short enough time and in a deliberate approach so that we can see what the weaknesses are and so that you can train through them, which means you can remove those weaknesses, right? That's the idea. You can't get weird about your weaknesses or failures, man. They're going to be exposed, right? And the goal is to actually find those things and eliminate them on the short iterations, those are software development, in the short iterations that give you plenty of times to retry, right? It's like plan, do, measure, adjust, right? You just keep doing that. So I actually was involved in one of these where we did a 6-week or 8-week dojo, and we went from a 2-week sprint, 2-week cycle iteration time to a 2.5-day iteration. Right? So we basically went from 10 working days to 2.5 days, 4 times the speed. And that meant we couldn't get a lot done in any iteration, right? Which meant we had to really break down the work. We really had to understand the details of what we were doing. And the goal was to look at everybody, every team, every 2.5 days, so twice a week, Wednesday and Friday. I think we did, or maybe it was Tuesday and Thursday. I don't remember. But the net was we exposed failure. And because the iterations were so small in the beginning, everybody failed. We exposed failure at a high rate, right? And the truly interesting thing was we had, however many teams we had, 2/3 of those teams, and actually these were the teams that were rated lower by some, 2/3 of those teams actually crushed it. They may not have been the fastest teams, they may not have been the most senior team, but they adapted to the life cycle. Right? They understood what they needed to do. They took the feedback. They shortened their planning cycle. They chunked their work down smaller. It wasn't a complete success, but they were amazing. And most of those teams came back with, when you said, what did you get out of this? They had something. And then we had another set of teams that were 1/3 of the teams we had in this, a couple arts. And that team totally failed to adjust to the pressure, right? It was super interesting. It just was like, and as far as they were concerned, the whole thing was unfair. Nobody operates like that, and it shouldn't be done. And I found it really interesting, right? And now what we should have done is, if we really meant to make change happen, and it turned out the org wasn't completely serious about this, but if we really meant to make change happen, we would have forced that team to comply, or we would have reworked the teams to make it work, right? In this case, though, and this is always the problem when you do the crucible, when you always apply heat, has management bought in? If management doesn't buy in, really, they will defend the teams that fail the dojo, right? They will defend the efforts of people to stay in their current lane. And I think that's super interesting, and it tells you one of the main problems with any of these exercises is that heat needs to be applied across the board, and you can't just apply it at an individual project or team level.